So it won't surprise you I'm using sub 70 wedges. So let's start with the loft of 50, 54, 58 degrees. And that's the setup I've had in my wedges since I switched to sort of a free wedge combination. And the reason for that is companies have de-lofted their pitching wedge over the years. Before the free wedge combination, I used to go pitching wedge and then 52 and 58 to try and keep that gap. As you'd expect from a specialist wedge, it's fully forged. So you can sort of change the loft and lie angle. Next, you're probably wondering what bounce angles I've got on each particular wedge. Just bringing the wedge closer to the camera and you'll see it's got a fully milled sole, making this wedge really, really versatile, meaning that you don't actually require wedges with different bounces. If we focus on the face and the hitting area, you'll notice that there's a lot of milling in between the grooves. That milling or roughness, if you rub your fingers along that and across it, it's quite an abrasive surface, so that should really sort of increase the spin properties. A milled face as well, what tends to occur is that you will remove any sort of excess material off it and it makes it more consistent. If we focus on the back of the wedge, some weight has been removed from various areas on the club head. By removing these weights, you can then reposition weight in different areas of the golf club, but without actually adding to the overall weight. The movement of this weight will make the club more forgiving and will also slightly change the flight. I'm not sure if I previously mentioned, but the actual material of these wedges is chrome. The designer of these wedges is TA3, which is Tommy Armour III. He's a former PGA golf professional who played on the US Tour. And if you know anything about Tommy Armour, he was a massive club tinkerer and someone who liked to actually change and play around with his equipment. And this is what he actually designed and produced. The club head sits nicely behind the ball. You can't see any of this back area as well, which I quite like. The only thing you can see is the leading top edge, which is slightly thicker than I would actually probably prefer, but I presume that it's like that so that it actually hides and sort of camouflages this back portion here. So if it was too thin a top line, then you'd see all this area at the back, and that might be slightly off-putting. The head is nice and big. It just gives me a little bit more confidence that I'm actually going to produce a half-decent shot. My only slight concern is with the 50-degree wedge, and when I actually look down at it, the face is quite narrow in comparison to the 54 and the 58, and that might cause me a little bit of a problem. I've personally always liked to see a more rounded finish with my wedges, and this one doesn't seem as rounded as the other two. If you like a club that looks more like a traditional bladed iron, then you might like the 50, and I will give it a good test, but I would say that's the area at the moment which is concerning me the most. So I have got some personalisation in the wedges. In this one, I've got I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles. In my 54, I've got Bernie and lots of different styles and fonts. I really like this particular design, and I probably would have had this in all three of my wedges if I'd have seen how well it turned out. And lastly, in the 58, I've got Bernie in one font, and it's quite big and quite bold and a bit of a statement on the back of my wedge. Which is unlike me, because I'm quite shy and reserved. So that's the club heads looked at and explained. The shafts are a little bit different, and that won't be for everyone's taste. Although I have graphite in my actual irons, these are very much steel, and it's a painted steel. I've had painted steel before. If you remember my Cobra clubs that I had at the start of the year, before I switched to the Nikes, they had a black shaft which looked very much like graphite, but it was just painted steel. And you'll notice on these shafts there's no shaft label, but I can tell you that is a KBS shaft. I had to do quite a bit of research about this shaft just to give some more information, because I'll be honest, I didn't really know a lot about it. So what I do know, it's from America. I don't think this shaft is ready available yet. When I was fitted for my irons in September with Nick, he had a couple of these shafts laying around, which he imported in, that he put in his own wedges, and he just asked me if I fancied putting them in my wedges. And they are a handcrafted shaft, which basically means a lot of the time the colours are slightly different. They do change colour slightly with in different lights, which is quite cool. Thankfully, they're not quite as pink as what I thought they would be. It's more of a purpley pink, so I don't think I'll get too much stick at the golf club. So what do I actually know about this shaft? It's a KBS Tour Wedge shaft. That's its official name. The USP for this shaft is that it's very stable, very consistent and very forgiving. It's exactly what you really want in your wedges. It won't surprise you, this is also a very heavy shaft and it's 125 grams. Looking on the website, KBS is saying that this shaft should give you a sort of a lower, more penetrating flight. I tend to sometimes sort of hit my wedges high and they sort of stall in the wind, so this should give me quite a low flight, but should also spin, which is exactly what I'd want. It won't surprise you that these grips marry in with the rest of my irons, and it's the Lambkin hybrid grip, which is really similar to a multi-compound Golf Pride grip. It's very soft rubber at the bottom, and then you've got some corded up the top. They are fitted the wrong way round, so the Lambkin is actually on the back of the grip, so that's the view as we look down at the wedge. The grip is the hybrid and it's the +2, which basically means it's got reduced taper. So a lot of grips start thick up the top and then sort of reduce down in size as you get down the grip. But with these grips, it's actually slightly thicker down the bottom. So the difference between the top and the bottom is minimal. I may at some stage change the grips to sort of a pink or purple grips. I think that'll look quite cool as well. But I do actually like the feel of these grips. And so far on my irons, I've really enjoyed the change of grip. So that's my new wedges, and they will go in the bag in the next week or so. So you should see them start to appear in vlogs, probably just before Christmas, because we do film a few weeks in advance. Thanks for watching the video. Please hit the subscribe button, like this video and comment below.